Welcome, Marge Hill, to Silver Sage Magazine. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I want to introduce everyone to you, Marge Hill. You're my mom. So wanted to interview you today on managing well, managing life after loss well, because I happen to know you've suffered a big loss in your life. And everyone I know personally is very impressed with how well you've managed over the last few years. And it's a.
Now you're gonna make me cry.
I have that effect on most people. I just had a colleague say the same thing. She said, "Don't look at me, you make me cry." I don't know what it is. First of all, I'm gonna ask, tell me just a little snippet about your husband, your marriage, your husband. Give us a little short history.
A short history? You mean an actual history kind of thing?
Yeah, his name, how you met, because I know, but nobody else knows.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about how I met your dad, whose name was Barry, and I think that's a funny story. I hope everybody else does too. He was having coffee at the coffee shop a couple of times a week, and he knew this other girl who was engaged to be married. So he and she would sit and talk, and he finally said to her one day, "Give me the name of somebody I could call and date." And she gave him 5 names, and mine was on the top. So Dad called me at about 5 o'clock in the evening to ask me to go out that evening, and I said, "Sorry, I have at 9 o'clock. At 7, he called me at 7 to ask me to go out at 9. I said, "Sorry, I have a paper to write." I really did go to college to get an education, by the way. And so he said, "Well, make it 9:30. I said, "Sorry, I have a paper to write." Well, we talked another minute or two, hung up. He thought I was the craziest girl he had ever talked to.
Who would turn down a great guy like him?
So, yeah, a lawyer, going to be in law school. I mean, that's, every girl would want to go out with somebody going to law school. So he went back to the coffee shop a couple of days later. He met Mim again, and he told her the story. He thought I was crazy because I wasn't jumping up and down about a blind date. And she said, "Give her another chance." So this time he called me at 5 o'clock, and I went out with him in the evening, and there was something very special about him.
Perhaps it was the pink socks.
It could have been the pink socks. Yes, it could have been. He never bought those kinds of things. His aunts and uncles, who he lived with, they bought it for him, and he wore anything. It was on sale. He wore it. So that was the story, and we started to date, and I met him very early April, and there's 4 weeks to a month, so give or take 7 or 8 weeks later, he asked me to go stay. And I went back home. I said yes. And I went back home to New Jersey to spend the summer. He came to visit a few times. School started. I was going into my senior year. He was going into his senior year in law school. And October 1st, he asked me to marry him. And I said yes. And so we had just over 55 years.
How many years?
Just less than 56.
Just less than 56 years.
Together.
How many kids?
Does that include you? 3.
1 amazing child and 2 others.
That's the way it goes.
Right. And then how many grandchildren?
5 grandchildren.
5 special grandkids.
Of course.
And then he died.
Well, I think we had a life in between. Yes, but he died. It was
after nearly 56 years. He suddenly died. It wasn't an expected thing. It was a sudden death.
It was an accident. He had a major accident. He was the healthiest 80-year-old you have ever met. I mean, he played squash, and he was vital and active and in great health, and he had this terrible accident. So there you go.
So how long ago was that?
August 6th of 2013.
So nearly, wow, nearly 4 years later.
It'll be 5 years this summer.
5 years, wow.
Wait a minute. It'll be 4 years. What year is this? 2017?
4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Seems like yesterday, but 4 years. And how are you? How are you dealing with that loss?
I agree with everybody else. I think I'm dealing very well. That's what I'm doing. You want to know why or how or what?
How are you dealing with the loss? I mean, it's easy to say you're doing it, but how are you actually doing it? What's the philosophy that you've been taking after your husband died?
Well, the first thing is that I look at it, I had him for 56 years in my life, and so I hate to say I can't be greedy, but one of the things is that I really believe that you have a choice when something like this happens, and your choice is to go on living, which I know Dad would want me to do, or to sit home and moan and whine and groan, and truthfully, nobody even wants to be with you when you're like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a very conscientious decision. I'm going to go on living, and I have, and I miss him. I miss him drastically many times, but I'm doing, and he'd be proud. He'd be happy. Let's put it this way. I know where the refrigerator is and the stove and the washing machine. He didn't do things. So if I went first, he'd be up the creek.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was a very famous person, social worker back in the day, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, wrote about the 5 stages of loss, grief and loss. And the first stage, of course, is denial, where you deny that the person is gone. Second stage being anger. You're angry that the person has gone. Third stage is bargaining. Bargaining is where you bargain with God or somebody that says, if you just give him back one more day, or if I do this, then this won't be real, or whatever the bargaining is. And the next stage is depression, where you get very sad and depressed as the reality of the loss really sinks in. And the fifth and final stage is acceptance, where you've accepted your loss and you move on. I guess my question is, have you gone through those stages? And not everybody goes through every stage. Some skip and some, go in cycles. They reverse back. What stage have you been in? Where are you going? Have you finished? Like where? So we have denial, anger, bargaining, depression.
I'll never remember all those things.
I understand, right?
So denial? No, not at all.
Did you remember going through that at first?
No, I can remember not going through it. I went through something and still do, believe it or not. It's not denial. It's like, oh, I've got to tell Dad. Oh, I've got to tell, oh, wait a minute, he's not here. But it's not denial as much as it's like he's still with me in many ways. But I right away know that, no, he's not here.
So more like disbelief.
Disbelief is a good, yes, exactly.
Okay. And then what about the anger?
I was very angry, but not at him. Well, I was very angry at what happened, why he died, and it was the doctor's fault, who admitted giving him medication he knew made him unstable on his feet and dizzy. And he knew it, and the medication was supposed to be only prescribed by the medical books for 3 months. Well, after Dad died, I did some investigation. You can figure that one out, I don't know, but I did some investigation by going to the pharmacy and found out he was prescribed this medication for 15 months.
Right.
Not 3, but 15.
Right.
And the worst part for me was when I tried to bring action through the New York State Medical Ethics Board.
Mm-hmm.
And they investigated, and somebody lied because they came back to me and said he was not the doctor that prescribed it. Well, I know, not only do I know very well, the prescription says it, the listing at the pharmacy said Dr. So-and-so.
Right.
Yeah, so I knew all that. But I decided I have to survive. And if I wasn't sleeping through that whole period either. And I said, I have to go on. And he's got to live with his conscience, and I have to go on living, period.
So you had that anger period, and that was directed more towards the doctors and what happened, because it was sort of I don't want to say a senseless death, but it could have been a preventable death.
It could have been preventable by the doctor, number one, and Dad knew he shouldn't take it. So I was a little ticked off at him. But at the same time, he never believed, if you remember, he believed he could height. So he also believed that this is not going to happen to him.
Right. What about the bargaining stage? Did you go through any of that where you were bargaining with yourself, with a greater power, with?
No.
No?
Never.
Okay. Do you think that people go through that? Do you know anyone who's gone through that stage?
No, not really. We don't talk about things. No, I don't know anybody.
Okay.
First thing.
I think some religions have that more prevalent in their cultures, where they
could be.
Okay, then we have the depression stage. What about that?
I've never been depressed. I've been lonesome. I've been I still can get angry at the way he died. But no, I have never gone through depression. That's not who I am. And as a matter of fact, I refuse to go out with women friends who, they're not good friends. The good friends don't do it. But some people that contacted me after Dad died, knowing I was alone, let's go out for dinner, go to a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't continue with a good share of these women because they moaned and whined and complained the entire evening. And I said, I'm out to have a good time and I don't mind somebody talking about it for a couple minutes, but not for a whole evening over dinner.
Right.
And so, no, the answer for me is no on a personal level.
And I think that's a testament to how well you've managed. You did not let depression take over. You made a conscious decision that you wanted to be surrounded by positive people, that you wanted to move forward and live your life and not just be sad the whole time.
Right.
And your depression was more missing Dad, missing your husband, more being lonely than clinical depression.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Wishing somebody was to give me a hug, to be with me, to go out for dinner, do a show, do whatever. Yeah.
And last stage, acceptance.
Is there a second choice?
I expect no less of an answer from you.
I mean, I hate to tell you this, but there is no other choice but to accept it, because if you don't, you're miserable.
I think that's so true. And I think that's what has made you manage the loss so well, is understanding that. And I think, again, that is a lot of insight, and kudos to you for understanding that. But yeah, I mean, there is no alternative. You have to eventually accept it because it's not changeable and can't go backwards. What are some of the things that people said to you after Dad died, without naming names, but some things that people said that were tougher to hear or mean or inappropriate, whatever?
You know, I was going to say nobody ever said anything appropriate, but one of the things that has just come to mind, somebody that is a neighbor, and she's a lot younger than I am, and she called me to offer her condolences. And she tells me she understands because her partner, it's a female partner. She didn't die, okay? But she said to me, her partner left. They split up.
Mm-hmm.
She understands my loss. I went, you got to be kidding me. You've really got to be kidding me. And it was things like that, you know, that it's not, and it was not 56 years worth. It was the fact that it wasn't just a year or 3 years.
Right.
Well, though you can love somebody, but it's a lot different. And especially if you're young and it's a different life that you've got it when you're that age, when you're 30 or 50 or 60 than you do when you're the age I was.
Right. And did anyone say anything that was truly just offensive or made you angry? That was more on the inappropriate, I guess, side, but anything that made you...
It almost made me angry. That one almost made me angry. She had, well, yeah, I think I was a little angry. I mean, not angry enough, I would never talk to her again.
Right.
And so if I see her, I say, hi, how are you? But no, it was difficult.
What would you say as advice to other people? You know, when someone has lost a loved one, what do you think should be the appropriate response?
I'm so sorry to hear about so-and-so. He was a nice guy, or she was a nice woman, or something positive that you can say about the person if you knew them personally.
Okay. So not making it a comparison, but just expressing your sincerity and sorry for your loss. If you had to give advice to someone who's lost their loved one, what's your top 3 things that you would recommend for people to do to manage their loss and their life well?
Oh, I didn't think of that question here. I think you don't wait until you're widowed. I think you have to be independent before you're widowed. I knew how to do things, certainly around the house. I mean, I could I couldn't necessarily fix the plumbing, but I could figure out what the problem was. I understood how we did our income taxes. I went and bought cars on my own. I didn't do that in the very beginning, but I certainly did it later. And I know women now that I said to somebody, have you ever bought a car on your own? Oh, no. I said, you know, it's not a bad idea. Do it when you have somebody at home to say, good job.
Right.
Rather than saying, you know, anyway. No, I think that's the key right there, is to be independent enough. You don't have to be like me, but certainly independent enough that you know how to stand up and have a life.
Right.
Or sit down and have a life, or whatever.
Okay. Well, I really thank you for being on Silver Sage Magazine and talking with me today. I will see you again another time, and we're going to talk about aging well on another time.
Well, getting old is good, because not getting old is really bad.
Goes with that alternative.
Yes.
Yes. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for being on Silver Sage.
You're more than welcome, honey. I love you.